launch auto has started. LWO1 WeatherNet. Liftoff conditions.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Ten, 9, 8,
Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. It's Sunday, March 14th, and you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 as it awaits its 6:01 a.m. Eastern Time launch from historic 39A launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. My name is Kate Tice, a senior certification engineer here at SpaceX, joining you from our headquarters in Hawthorne, California. You're watching a live webcast for our 22nd Starlink mission and our 8th launch of 2021. Starlink is a constellation of satellites that can provide high-speed, low-latency internet all over the globe, particularly in remote areas where connectivity is limited or completely unavailable. Starlink is now delivering initial beta service both domestically and internationally. At the moment, our beta service is available in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, and as of this week, we've expanded our beta service coverage area to include Western Germany and the South Island of New Zealand. As we launch more satellites, install more ground stations, and improve our networking software, data speed, latency, and uptime will all improve dramatically. And with every Starlink launch, we get closer to our goal of near global coverage of the populated world later this year. Today's Starlink launch is particularly special as this is the first time that we are flying a Falcon 9 rocket for the 9th flight. We reflew a Falcon 9 booster for the first time just 4 years ago. So to be at the 9th flight of a booster is pretty incredible and super exciting for our teams. With our launch teams ready for liftoff, Falcon 9 started loading propellants at T-minus 35 minutes. We're currently approaching T-minus 9 minutes and 30 seconds, and as of now, all systems are green for an on-time liftoff at 6:01 a.m. Eastern. With that, let's take a closer look at that rocket on your screen. There you've got a live view of Falcon 9. The two-stage rocket stands 70 meters or 229 feet tall. That's greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft. The first stage is the bottom two-thirds of the vehicle. It has 9 Merlin engines that do the bulk of the work to get Falcon 9 off the ground and up into the thinner parts of the Earth's atmosphere. You can tell by the entry soot that on the first stage that this vehicle has flown before. As I mentioned, today is the first time that we'll be reusing our Falcon 9 first stage for a 9th time. This booster debuted on our Demonstration 1 mission for NASA in March of 2019, and then flew again 3 months later on the RadarSat Constellation mission. In 2020, it supported 4 Starlink missions, as well as the SXM-7 mission at the end of the year. It most recently supported a Starlink mission at the end of January. Falcon 9 is the first orbital-class rocket capable of reflight. In fact, 80% of our launches last year were on flight-proven rockets, and this year, to date, all of our flights have been on a flight-proven booster. At 2.5 minutes into flight, the first stage will separate from the second stage and make its way for a landing on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. If successful, today will mark the 9th recovery for this booster. Above the first stage is the second stage, and that has a single Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine as we call it, and that ignites after the first stage separates. The second stage is what will carry our Starlink satellites to orbit, deploying at about T+1 hour into the mission. And lastly, our Starlink satellites are safely enclosed inside of that payload fairing that you see there. It's 5 meters or 17 feet in diameter, and that structure is located, of course, at the very top of the rocket. It protects the payload from aerothermal loads, heating, and contamination during ascent. And once we reach the vacuum of space, we'll jettison the fairing as the second stage will continue on its journey to orbit. Today will be the second flight for this fairing. It first supported our Transporter 1 mission earlier this year. We'll be attempting to recover it by retrieving each half from the water with our recovery vessels Go Searcher and Go Navigator. As for weather, things are looking great. We have a 90% favorable forecast for this morning. With that, the vehicle, satellites, weather, and range are all looking good for an on-time liftoff just 6.5 minutes from now. As mentioned in previous webcasts, although still in beta testing, Starlink is already serving locations where internet access was previously unreliable or entirely unavailable. These days, when more people are working and learning from home, internet connectivity is more important than ever. During a recent Starlink launch, we mentioned that Starlink is serving over 40 households in Wise County, Virginia, that previously had limited internet access in order to support remote learning. A couple days ago, North Carolina announced that it's providing some students in 2 counties with Starlink access to support remote learning as well. Swain County, located in the Great Smoky Mountains in the western part of the state, and Hyde County, located on the East Coast. Due to geographic barriers, students in both counties have been previously unable to connect to high-speed internet and effectively participate in remote learning. In particular, on Oracoke Island in Hyde County, students are often unable to attend class in person due to flooding or other weather events. Providing service to these students will enable them to access the same educational materials as their peers in more densely populated areas. These are the opportunities that get the team here super excited about what Starlink can do. To learn more or find out if service is available in your area, head on over to starlink.com. At this point, we're coming up to the T-5 minute mark, and Falcon 9 is moving into the final stages of our countdown. We're waiting for the transporter erector, or TE, to retract. That is the white painted structure that you see there next to the vehicle. First, the TE clamps will open, and then the transporter erector will begin to retract away from the rocket slightly. And at T0, hydraulics will pull the TE further away from Falcon 9 as it lifts off. That TE retraction will begin with the clamp arms beginning to open. That takes about 15 seconds for them to fully open. And then about 30 seconds later, we'll see the strong back retract. And that takes about 25 seconds for it to retract just a couple degrees away from the vehicle. The TE provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage. There we can see those clamps beginning to release. The TE provides liquids, gases, electrical connections to the second stage, as well as air conditioning to the payload fairing. And if you listen closely, you might be able to hear the hiss and pop of pressure venting from the rocket and plumbing in the TE. The first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of kerosene fuel and liquid oxygen. Super chilled liquid oxygen is our propellant oxidizer, and it's that super chilled LOX that is creating the white clouds that you see around the vehicle. That occurs when the super chilled liquid oxygen turns into its gaseous state when it's exposed to the warmer ambient air around the vehicle. The first stage will be completing its prop loading here in just a couple of seconds at T-3 minutes. And second stage wraps up its prop loading at T-2 minutes.
Pogo bleed verification.
Once we finish loading liquid oxygen at T-2 minutes, the last major event in the countdown comes at T-1 minute.
Stage 1 LOX load closed out.
And there we heard confirmation that stage 1 has completed its LOX load. So now second stage will continue that prop load. Like I was just saying, the final countdown we're progressing through. At T-1 minute will be the final major milestone that we'll hear called out. You'll hear us say Falcon 9 is in startup. That's when the rocket's flight computers take control. Those flight computers will then light the Merlin engines at about T-minus 2 seconds, and then liftoff will be commanded at T0. So we actually ignite those 9 Merlin engines 2 seconds prior to liftoff. The Starlink payload continues to be healthy. The Falcon 9 team is tracking no issues on the rocket. Weather continues to look great, and the range remains green for launch.
Stage 2 lock, so it's complete.
All right, and there we heard the call out that stage 2 LOX load is complete. So at this point, the vehicle is fully loaded. And we are continuing on in our countdown.
Gas launch closeouts.
At T-minus 1 minute, we will hear the call out that Falcon 9 is in startup. Again, this means that the flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. At that point in time, the first and second stages will also begin to pressurize for launch.
Falcon 9's in startup.
All right, there we heard it. The onboard flight computers have taken over the launch countdown as Falcon 9 is now in startup.
Falcon 9, Starlink LDs go for launch.
Okay, there we heard our launch director give the final go for launch. As we approach the T-minus 30-second mark, all systems are go for launch. Let's listen in to terminal count and watch as Falcon 9 takes our stack of Starlink satellites into orbit.
T-minus 15 seconds.
Falcon 9's configured for flight.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
Vehicle's pitching downrange.
Stage 1 propulsion's nominal.
As you can see, Falcon 9 has successfully
Telemetry nominal.
Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, carrying our stack of Starlink satellites to orbit. We're going to throttle the 9 Merlin engines down in preparation for max Q,
Vehicle supersonic.
or maximum aerodynamic pressure. This is the largest structural load that the vehicle will see during ascent, so slowing it down a little bit will help the vehicle pass through that short period.
Max Q.
And there we heard the call out for max Q. Now, in about a minute, we're going to have 3 events happen in quick succession, back to back. The first one is main engine cutoff, or MECO. This is where all 9 of those M1D engines are going to shut off, and that'll help slow the vehicle down in preparation for the second event, stage separation. As the name would suggest, this is when the first and second stages will separate from each other. The first stage will start its way back to Earth.
Vax chilling in.
We heard the chill-in. We're flowing some super chilled liquid oxygen into the turbopumps on that second stage engine. The first stage, after stage separation, will make its way back to Earth. Second stage will continue its journey with the third event, SES-1, or Second Engine Start 1. This is where MVAC will light up and begin to propel second stage along with the Starlink satellites into orbit. And main engine cutoff will be coming up in 10 seconds. Everything continues to look nominal there with that vehicle trajectory.
And MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
All right, and there on your screen,
Ignition and throttle up complete.
as the MVAC nozzle begins to develop that bright glow, we can see that all three events, like I said, quick succession. On the left-hand side of your screen, we have the first stage. In the background behind the first stage, I absolutely love this view. We got some night lights of the Space Coast behind it. The first stage is actually...
Fairing separation confirmed.
There we heard the call out for fairing sep, and we can see that stack of Starlink satellites there. Great views. Everything looks nominal there with our second stage. As it heads towards its targeted drop-off orbit, first stage is going to execute 2 burns in order to make its way back to Earth. If you look closely, you can still see the night lights of the Space Coast there in the upper left corner. The first of the 2 burns that first stage will execute is the entry burn, where 3 of the M1D engines will reignite. This will help to slow the stage down as it re-enters the upper part of the Earth's atmosphere. The second burn is the landing burn. This is a single engine burn that brings the vehicle speed
Signal Bermuda.
that brings the speed down rapidly in order to land on the drone ship. So there are both shots that we have on screen, are actually both of the second stage. We can see the large plume on the left-hand side. Everything continues to look nominal. So there we can see that second stage vacuum engine. This engine will power the second stage to its targeted orbit. What you can't see on screen is the other end of the second stage, where the 60 Starlink satellites are stacked and awaiting deployment later on in our mission this morning. Starlink satellites operate over 60 times closer to the Earth than traditional satellites, resulting in much lower latency. For those of you that might not be familiar, latency is the time that it takes to send data from one point to the next. So in this context, it's the time it takes to send data.
Second stage is following a nominal trajectory.
Good call out there for nominal trajectory for second stage. So latency, in this context, it's the time that it takes to send data from the ground to the satellite and then back. When satellites are far away from Earth, latency is high. We're talking 550 milliseconds or more. This prevents activities like video calls and online gaming. When satellites are close to Earth, like the Starlink satellites, latency is low, more like 20 to 40 milliseconds versus 550 milliseconds. This enables video calls and online gaming with an experience similar to fiber or cable. And because Starlink is a satellite network, you're not limited by ground infrastructure. That's one of the main reasons why people who live in rural or remote areas don't have access to high-speed internet, because running the fiber or the cable necessary to get them connected is just too expensive. The Starlink kit comes with everything you need to get connected, including your Starlink, also known as Dishy McFlatface, your Wi-Fi router, power supply, and cabling. The hardware comes pre-connected in the box, so all you have to do is download the Starlink app, plug it in, find the best installation spot for your Dishy, and you can get connected
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
You can get connected to the internet in a matter of minutes.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
And there we can see on your screen startup of that first of 2 burns, the entry burn. This lasts 20 seconds. As I mentioned earlier, we have reignited 3 of the 9 Merlin engines at the base of the first stage vehicle.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
And shutdown of those 3 engines. So the reason we perform the entry burn is we want to slow the first stage down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. As you can tell by the energy there on the grid fins, we can see that it's going pretty fast, and we want to slow the velocity down as it re-enters the atmosphere.
Second stage is on a nominal trajectory.
Heard the call out there that second stage is on a nominal trajectory. The next event that we have coming up will be the landing burn for the first stage. As the name suggests, this is when we will be attempting to land on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which is currently holding position a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida in the
Stage 1 transonic.
a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. Everything continuing to look good with the second stage and our Starlink satellites.
Also signal stage 1, Cape Canaveral expected.
Stage 1 landing burn.
So we heard the call out that the landing burn for stage 1 has begun. We can start to see the plume there on our Droneship cam on the left-hand side of your screen. Hopefully we'll be able to maintain video signal through landing.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy.
Okay, the landing legs are out.
Terminal guidance.
Unfortunately, it looks like we weren't able to maintain that video signal. We'll bring that back to you as soon as we can, as well as a status update on that landing. Everything continues to look good.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
Everything continues to look good there with second stage.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
All right, we heard it. We couldn't see it, but we did hear verbal confirmation that we had a successful landing of that booster, marking our 70.
Also signal stage 2 from the Cape as expected.
This marks our 77th successful recovery of an orbital class rocket and the 9th landing of this particular booster. Like I mentioned before, this is the first time that we've launched and landed a Falcon 9 first.
Acquisition of signal, Newfoundland. Also signal Bermuda expected. Also signal Newfoundland expected. Acquisition signal, Goon Hilly. Also signal Lagoon Hilly expected. Acquisition of signal, Diego Garcia.
Welcome back to our live coverage for this Starlink mission. We had an on-time liftoff at 6:01 a.m. Eastern Time, and we had a successful 9th flight and landing for that first stage booster. Our second stage is still looking good and on a nominal trajectory, and getting ready for SES-2, or second engine start 2, in just a couple of seconds. It'll be a very short 1-second burn of our MVAC engine. Looks like we might be having a little bit of trouble with our ground stations. We might not be able to get video. We'd like to bring it to you, but we're going to listen in for the call out on the net to confirm SECO. Like I said, this will be a quick 1-second burn. Data looks nominal for second
Good orbit
stage there.
insertion.
Okay, we heard the confirmation there that we had good orbits. That means that that quick 1-second burn was successful. We have another coast phase before we deploy this next batch of Starlink satellites into orbit. During this time, the spacecraft will begin to spin along its central axis, and that will give the Starlink satellites the momentum they require to space themselves out over time after deployment. While this happens, sit back and enjoy some space jams. We'll see you back here at T plus 1 hour and 4 minutes.
Loss of signal, Diego Garcia, expected.
Welcome back once again to our live coverage. We had an on-time liftoff at 6:01 a.m. Eastern Time from Kennedy Space Center. Our Falcon 9 first stage successfully returned to Earth after its 9th flight, a first for our boosters. And as for our second stage, which you see there on your screen, we've successfully executed 2 burns of that MVAC engine, and we're now getting ready to deploy our Starlink satellites in just a few seconds. At this point in time, the second stage began to rotate along its central axis in order to give the satellites the momentum they need to space themselves out from each other after deployment. So at this point, let's listen in for the call out of that payload deployment.
Starlink deploy confirmed.
And there you can see on your screen the tension rod being released, and the Starlink satellites are slowly separating away from the second stage. Shortly, they will deploy their solar arrays, and over the next few days and weeks, they'll distance themselves out from each other and use their onboard ion thrusters to make their way to operational orbit. And with that, we'll be bringing our webcast to a close. Thank you to the Range and FAA for supporting this mission. And to all our viewers, happy Pi Day, and thanks for joining us.